Welcome Scorpio to your in-depth monthly forecast for July 2024 for the Ascendant, the Sun or the Moon. On the screen now I'm showing your event chart right at the start of the month. Now we need to be mindful of your two rulers, traditional Mars and modern Pluto. Mars is in your sector of relating. Mars in the 7th house, as this is, can be quite feisty, but it's also brilliant for being a lot more assertive, and it's forging a fantastic link to Venus right at the start of the month. So Venus is in the part of your situation to do with higher truths, but also adventure and independence. So how will this work out? Well, I feel if you're collaborating with someone at the start of July, Scorpio, that you get on well with, doesn't have to be a romantic tie, could be someone who has a shared interest. So when you enjoy competing against each other a little bit, maybe even in a sporting context, or even traveling together, or enjoying interests, then that can be a relationship that really is exciting as you make your way into July. But Pluto has of course been on your 4th house cusp since the 21st of January. And that may have been evoking some quite deep changes around what you want in terms of where you live and how you live, but also in terms of your emotions and also family affairs. And even in terms of how you see yourself, there may have been some big shifts going on. So those are the big standouts at the start of this month. The moon in the sign of Taurus is broadly in a square with Pluto. So you can see the moon just below Mars in Taurus. But the moon loves being in Taurus, it's exalted there, so it's a great position because it softens the assertion of Mars, brings a bit more need for harmonization, balance, and exchanges of goodwill. But that link back to Pluto suggests there could be some talking or dialogue around some very deep relationship matters in the very closest ties in your life. But we also have the moon linking back from house 7, relationships, to the sun in house 9. So that's also echoing that Venus-Mars link, where if you're collaborating with somebody on something that's exciting, it can be something that is supported by the sun and the moon too. What about Mercury? Well, Mercury is also like Venus and the sun in your sister water sign of Cancer, but right at the top of your chart. So it's pretty well pivoting in an opposition to Pluto. And we always need to be mindful of the planet that's most northerly on any chart wheel. So Mercury's really influential as you come into this month. Mercury in the 9th house could see you restless. It is about exploring. It can be about perhaps learning new skills, languages, and of course the aforementioned travel. But it's forging a very potent link to Uranus in your 7th house. Uranus through the 7th house since 2019 full-time, March, has probably seen quite a lot of ups and downs around relationships, perhaps some electric connections, but also some big separations. If you've stayed in the same relationship through that whole journey, there probably has been some turbulence along the way, but perhaps a much greater understanding of what you really need around relationships, and perhaps a more truthful, realistic involvement has developed. So we got a lot of energy in your 7th house of relating, a lot of energy in the 9th house, which is about meeting life in a more experimental way, being interested in the big picture. That can be about travel, but it can be about things like philosophy and spirituality. So whoever you're relating to, who matches your passion for life, it could be set fair as this month begins. But the other thing about the 9th house is it can be about change. And it can also be about experimentation, but also about adventure and independence. So if there is a relationship which you feel is a bit limiting or restricting, I feel that there may be something that's starting to develop, possibly around your work, that could see you making some changes. Now, as the month evolves, the first few days, Venus moves forwards and forges a very solid link to Saturn in your 5th house. The 5th house can be about romance, can be about where we demonstrate our flair and creativity and individuality. Saturn can be a passion killer there, but that link to Venus suggests if there are solid relationships in your life where you feel you can be totally truthful with someone, those are relationships you're really going to celebrate. But then on the 2nd, Mercury, the planet of communication, moves across that 10th house, triggering something big around your interaction with the world at large. Are you thinking about leaving a job that's been part of your situation for some while? Are you, have you been in a role which has now, for some reason, been made redundant? You know, because we live in such a fast-changing environment for employment. Well, Mercury's pushing you to think about how you can reskill, flex, learn new knowledge, but particularly in terms of your work. But if you've got some emotional blockages about your worthiness in terms of meeting people, going through interviews, having to submit your application, that could show up quite quickly. So there could be some tender exchanges in the early part of this month, or you may need quite a lot of support from someone close to you if you are a little bit more reticent at putting your best foot forwards. But on the 5th, there is a new moon in Cancer. The new moon in Cancer is a lovely event, essentially because the moon rules Cancer, so we can celebrate the power of the moon. So the moon in Cancer is very nurturing, it's very much about being very caring, and it can also be about our environment. But I feel that you could find yourself feeling quite unsettled and may want to do something much more spontaneously over the next month. And that could be to break out of something that ordinarily gives you a sense of structure and actually feeds your sense of security. But you could find yourself feeling bolder. Now, this particular new moon also T-squares with the positions of the North Node and also the South Node, so the nodal axis. What does that suggest? Well, your desire to break out, be independent and free spirit has to fit somehow or another with the energies of the South Node in the 12th house, which is deeply psychological and can be to do with the things you stick with because it makes you feel safe but can hold you back. And the North Node is pushing you to try some different things in a practical context of your life. You also have Chiron in the 6th house as well, which is set to go retrograde on the 26th of this month. And Chiron could have also, in recent months, been asking you to look at your sense of value, how you value yourself, what's your identity around your work, and also look at your physical health. You know, are there things you can do to make things a little easier? So the need for escapism that comes from that new moon has to in some ways fit with another part of your nature that needs to be dutiful, the North Node, but also competes with perhaps your anxieties, the position of the South Node. So I can tell you that this is going to be an amazing time for you to go on a long haul travel, do something completely daring and different, but that might not chime to your situation because of the energies of the nodal axis, which is very strong. However, on the 12th, Venus moves right to the top of your chart to join up with Mercury. Whereas Mercury may have seen you thinking about how you're connecting to people in positions of influence or about work, Venus is about how you relate, but it can also be about money. So one of the things that Venus is going to evoke within you is a desire to improve your lot. But you could also splash out on something that gives you a sense of achievement, maybe like a nice new vehicle, or you might decide to go for a bigger property, because the influence of Venus can be to do with more material things on the 10th house. But I think in terms of relationships, it's about how you connect and build dialogue with those who can actually be of help to you in terms of your career. And diplomacy, which is another Venusian quality, is something that you can use to help you get ahead. But Venus, like Mercury before it, clashes with Pluto. It's possible that around a family matter, maybe you and a partner might want something different in terms of children, where you live, the physical structure. There may be some quite heavy stuff that comes up from that, but there is no denying that Venus moving into that area does create opportunities. But on the 20th, your traditional ruler Mars makes its way into the chatty Gemini. Now, as you know, it's been in the 7th house for you, which has been great, giving you extra confidence around relating, but also setting your boundaries. But if you have been talking to someone you really like, Mars moving through the 8th house can see you talking even deeper about whether this can become something more committed. But the sign of Gemini in itself can be a little bit committal phobic. So there's a bit of a paradox there. So the 8th house is where we're invested and devoted. Mars can be about sex in the 8th house, certainly about instant gratification, but the sign of Gemini can be a bit flirty, it's mutable. So there could be, over the next 6 weeks, particularly if you are a free spirit, more than one occasion where you could find yourself up close and personal to someone. It could be very exciting, but whether it will be long lasting is another matter. But if you've been building a dialogue with someone you really like, this could be a 6-week period where you do actually go all in together in a much more meaningful way. But the key is Mars forges an immediate link to your modern ruler of Pluto in your 4th house. So if there's something evolving in your life, like a property renovation, or you're buying and selling real estate, or you're looking to develop the inner workings of your emotions in quite a passionate way. So for example, if you decide that you're going to actively engage with some counselling, or download some kind of self-help app, that would be a critical moment. But your determination could be very strong with your two rulers collaborating so well. On the 21st, we have the second of the two Capricorn full moons that we've got this year. The last one was snagged by Pluto in the 4th house for you, and therefore the conversations you were having on the last full moon needed to be informed by your deep feelings, but also because Neptune, right at the end of your 5th house, not nearly on the 6th, meant that if you were trying to escape something, the Sun in the 9th house, the dialogue, the Moon in the 3rd house, needed to work with those responsibilities and obligations that I've been talking to you about in terms of the North Node and Chiron. So that was a tricky full moon. This one is very positive because it links brilliantly to Uranus, and also Neptune blesses it. So your instinctiveness and also openness to being in touch with the things we can't always see, you know, the more ephemeral parts of life. So instinct, if you feel pulled instinctively to have a conversation or get in touch with someone, because this full moon still activates your 3rd and 9th houses, very much about dialogue, then go for it, because there could be an exciting connection that comes from this full moon over the following 2 weeks. But then on the 22nd, the Sun goes right to the top of your chart, the 10th house cusp. The Sun rules the sign of Leo, so it's coming home for the first time in 11 months. And if you are someone who is very, very ambitious and you do want to get recognition for what you have to offer, or you want to snaffle that new job, whereas Mercury has given you the dialogue, Venus the charm, and perhaps the desire to splash out, the Sun is more about your drive. So your drive to manifest some kind of improvement in terms of your recognition, your goals and ambitions, the amount of visibility you have to raise that in a meaningful way is going to be very strong. But once again, you have to overcome any inner blockages that might inhibit the process, which could be there through Pluto in an opposition with the Sun. You also may encounter someone, just like you did at the start of the month, who's very opinionated, because Mercury opposite Pluto and the Sun opposite Pluto means we can encounter people who are on something of a power trip. But the important thing is also to understand what our motives are and what we might be tempted to use in our tactics. So if there's something you want to do that's so important to you, feel so driven about it, but your partner or a family member sees it differently, try not to swat that opposition. You need to have an open dialogue about it, which hears where they're coming from, even if you feel very impassioned about making that move. Mercury moves to help you on the 25th because it darts into the second of its two home signs of Virgo. But for you, this is about your network. It's about your ability to cultivate contacts. Your communicational skills are sharpened up with Mercury's position in Virgo. But just to say, the Sun is forging such an amazing link with Mars through the last week of this month. So if there is a goal, ambition, job, property, new car that you really want, and you've got all the pieces in the puzzle ready to put in place to go for it, you're really going to go for it with a fantastic amount of conviction. And the only thing that can snag it is if you're not staying in touch with what you need emotionally, or there's someone close to you who sees it very differently. And therefore, in that situation, you need to be a bit more patient and try to engender in them an enthusiasm for what you're trying to do by patiently explaining your big picture, because that's what the 10th house is about. It's about how we connect with the wider world. Now, if work and ambitions is not your thing, what are the other things that inspire you? Is it voluntary work? Is it helping people in your community? Is it your grandchildren? Is it your hobbies? Is it going on a world tour? Whatever the burning ambition is for you, it's going to come to the fore by the end of this month. But as Chiron goes retrograde on the 26th, it's important, along with that nodal axis on the new moon of the 5th, that you don't let practicalities, but also through Pluto, your own personal fears and inhibitions stop you from seizing what can be quite an immense amount of opportunities this month, whether it's in terms of travel, interests, relationships, or professionally, or in terms of goals and ambitions as the month goes on. It's been great to be with you, Scorpio. Have a lovely month, and please, if you've yet to do so, subscribe to my channel.